I thought we can start today's subject, which I understand is ISKCON's Seven Purposes, with reading from Caitanya-caritamrta. So we can chant Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Caritamrta.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Caritamrta.
Jaya Detachment, Jaya Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Jaya Detachment, Jaya Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Detachment, Jaya Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Jaya Detachment, Jaya Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Everybody, Jaya
Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Detachment, Jaya Gaudiya Vaishnava.
So, our subject is the purpose, or the seven purposes. What are we doing? Why are we here? I understand there's going to be an Ishtagosti this afternoon on this subject. So to, as we say, prime the pump. Priming the pump means pouring water into the hand pump so that it will start working. So I hope we can say a few things that might serve this purpose. And I think there'll be more of a discussion this afternoon. In Antilila of Sri Caitanya-caritamrta, let me get notes here. This was, starting from 50. In Antilila, we have in chapter 3, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meeting with Srila Haridasa Thakura and discussing with him some concerns which he, Lord Chaitanya, had. And he first says, Haridasa kali kale javana apar go brahmane himsa kore mahadurachar. My dear Thakur Haridas, in this age of Kali, most people are bereft of Vedic culture, and therefore they are called Yavanas. They are concerned only with killing cows and Brahminical culture. In this way, they are engaged in sinful activities. How will these Yavanas be delivered? To my great unhappiness, I do not see any way. This is Lord Chaitanya speaking, and he does not see any way, but his devotee Haridasa does. Haridasa kahe Prabhu chintana koriha javoner sangsaraki dukkana bhaviho. Haridasa Thakur replied, my dear Lord, do not be in anxiety. Do not be unhappy to see the condition of the Yavanas in material existence. Because the Yavanas are accustomed to say, Ha Ram, Ha Ram, O Lord Ramachandra. they will very easily be delivered by this Nama-abhasa. A devotee in advanced ecstatic love exclaims, "Oh, my Lord Ramachandra, oh, my Lord Ramachandra." But the Yavanas also chant, "Haram, Haram." Just see their good fortune. He goes on, Namacharya Haridasa Thakura, the authority on the chanting of the holy name, said, "The chanting of the Lord's holy name to indicate something other than the Lord is an instance of Nama-abhasa. Even when the holy name is chanted in this way, its transcendental power is not destroyed." The word is sankete, by intimation, not imitation, but intimation. And then he quotes some Sanskrit verse. Where's this from? Dangshtri dangstra hato mlecho harameti puna puna utvapi muktim apnoti kim puna shradhaya gurnan. Even a mlecha who is being killed by the tusk of a boar and who cries in distress again and again, "Haram, Haram," attains liberation. What then to speak of those who chant the holy name with veneration and faith? A bit later in this chapter, let's see if I can find it. Yeah. After discussing this point, then Lord Chaitanya is still expressing some concern. This is verse 67, chapter 3. Pritivite bahujiva stamara jangama iha shovar hi prakare hoibe mocham. On this earth there are many living entities, some moving and some not moving. What will happen to the trees, plants, insects, and other living entities? How will they be delivered from material bondage? And Haridasa replies, Haridasa kohe, Prabhu se kripa tomar, stavara jangama age koriatra nishtar. He replies, "My dear Lord, the deliverance of all moving and non-moving living entities takes place only by your mercy. You have already granted this mercy and delivered them." Job's already been done. You have loudly chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, and everyone, moving or not moving, has benefited by hearing it. My Lord, the moving entities who have heard your loud sankirtan have already been delivered from bondage to the material world. And after the non-moving living entities like trees hear it, there is an echo. There's an echo. Pratidvani hoy. Actually, however, it is not an echo. It is the kirtan of the non-moving living entities. All this, although inconceivable, is possible by your mercy. Yes, akatya katana, an inconceivable incident, a story which cannot be told, akatya. And he goes on, when loud chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is performed all over the world by those who follow in your footsteps, all living entities, moving and non-moving, dance in ecstatic devotional love. Shunya prema veshe nache stavara janga. Prema vesha means absorbed in prema. It can mean also possessed with prema, possessed with love, overcome with love. Well, that all sounds very wonderful and amazing and akatya kata. Then we come to the later, a bit later history of our movement. So we might want to put ourselves in perspective of history. And I would say a good place to do this especially is in what we might call the first outreach mission after Lord Chaitanya's time, and that is of Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura together with Shyamananda Prabhu and Srinivasa Acharya. As you may know, they were commissioned by Jiva Goswami to bring scriptures written by the Goswamis to Bengal, which they did. And as you may also know, there was some trouble when they arrived in Bengal. It's quite dramatically described how the king's hoodlums stole the treasure of these scriptures, and then they were recovered or rediscovered by Srinivasa Acharya, who became the guru of the king, whose name was, what was his name again? Anyway, it was in Vishnupur, Vana Vishnupur. It's a very wonderful story. But what I want to point out is that it's been noted by some scholars that Narottama, Shyamananda, and Srinivas had a strategy for spreading the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Bengal. And the strategy had two parts. One was to copy the Caitanya-caritamrta as many times as possible and get it distributed. There were no printing presses at that time, so it meant hand copy. And there are many manuscripts of Caitanya-caritamrta. Confirmed. This sound of the story of Narottama. So, copying the Caitanya-caritamrta, because Caitanya-caritamrta was a kind of synthesis of the teachings of the Goswamis. So they wanted the people of Bengal, many who saw themselves as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but who had different ideas. There was a whole spectrum of ideas already by that time. They wanted to unify them. And so it was essential that the teachings as brought together by Krishnadas Kaviraj be made accessible. The other branch of their strategy was to hold festivals. They organized. We know of the Khetri festival was a very key sort of turning point. estimated to be some 50 years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed. They say that it was the first Gaur Purnima festival was in Caitanya-caritamrta. But there were other festivals in different parts of Bengal that were organized especially by these three devotees, very important devotees. So they would send out invitations, and again, no internet, no WhatsApp, no anything. You had to go if you had a message to deliver. It meant you have a message to physically deliver. You had to go there. So they would do that. They would send people around, invite them. We're having a festival. You have to come. Please come. And then so many would come together. And then in these festivals, they would, as we say, they would preach. They would teach. They would tell, this is how it is. You have to understand who is Lord Chaitanya. He's, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so on, as Krishna Dasa Thakura was teaching. This was early, you can say, in the progression of the mission. We can jump now to the later time of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Bhaktivinoda Thakura was a fascinating personality in so many ways. And especially important for us is the context in which he lived. It was British colonial India, and it was not just that, you could say, physical situation, but the intellectual atmosphere, the intellectual situation had become highly influenced by the British and European thought in general. And Bhaktivinoda Thakura was quite well schooled in certain aspects of this Western culture. And he responded to it. He was invited to join what were called the Bhadra. Well, he was a kind of Bhadralok himself. That was sort of the class he was in. But he was invited to join the Brahmo Samaj, which was established by Ram Mohan Roy in the early 19th century as a kind of renovation of what was more and more getting called Hinduism. This was a new word in the 19th century, Hinduism. Hindu goes back earlier. In fact, it's in the Caitanya-caritamrta. He was invited to join this Brahmo Samaj, which rejected the Puranas, including the Bhagavata Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam. It rejected the epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and accepted only the Upanishads. They said, the real thing is the Upanishads, so we will. But they mixed it with some Western flavor, especially in the form of one of the quasi-Christian Protestant traditions of the West of England and America, namely the Unitarians. That's another story. Anyway, his response was, thank you, but no thank you. Bhaktivinoda Thakura said, I'm inspired by Srimad Bhagavatam. And he gave a speech and he wrote an essay, the Bhagavata, its philosophy, its ethics, and its theology, in which he addresses these educated people who were skeptical or cynical about the Bhagavatam, and said, he doesn't use this expression, but he kind of says, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to understand, appreciate the deeper significance, which is the Bhagavatam. And then we especially celebrate one of his several sons, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, for his organizational, aside from the substance of his teaching, he organized the Gaudiya system and established so many mats around India, and one in Dhaka, and I believe one in Rangoon. So at that time, that was very wide distribution of what otherwise was Bengali culture. And then our Srila Prabhupada, on the very day, the first day of his meeting, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur received his lifetime mission when Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, recognized he's an educated young man and speaks English. You should spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya in English. Just recently I visited the place, which I guess at that time, I think it has a different address now, but it was Ultadanga Road number 1. Have any of you visited there? Yeah. I was amazed at how nicely they had renovated. I mean, really first class. Everything just really tastefully done. And it's an inspiration because it's the place where our mission, you can say, begins. It's on the rooftop at Ultadanga Road number 1. You can feel this amazing moment. And Srila Prabhupada took his guru's request very seriously, as we know, and he proceeded to develop his mission by one of his ways of serving this mission was writing what at the time was a very modest magazine, Back to Godhead magazine. And in Back to Godhead magazine, did I say it here? In 1956, I think it was October 1956, he wrote he had established the League of Devotees in Jhansi. That was his first attempt at mission. And in October 1956, he wrote the purposes of the League of Devotees. Here it is. And there are 13 purposes. And I asked many years ago, I must have asked Jayaveta Maharaj, how did this become 7 purposes? And if I remember correctly, he said I don't know, the BTG staff, or how it was, maybe Tattva Prabhu knows, we kind of consolidated them into the 13 into 7, because the 13 included some sub-points also. But just, I won't read through all of this, but he says, again, this was Back to Godhead, Volume 3, Part 10, October 20th, 1956. Prabhupada says, the League of Devotees, after deliberate consideration of authoritative scriptures for spiritual science, has put forward the following aims and objects in view for the society. 1, to propagate spiritual knowledge systematically for checking the imbalance of life to the whole race of India and the world over, with a view to educate the people in general in the techniques of spiritual life as the basis for balanced psychic and biological developments of the human race, and thereby achieve real unity and peace of the contending elements of the present world. That's number 1. So you can see that's been edited to make it a bit more compact in the present version. The second one, to build up a social structure on the foundation of spiritual progress and establishment of peace and amity between man and man throughout the whole world. So at this time, this was 1956, Srila Prabhupada was thinking of a world mission. I'm guessing that his name for that institution, the League of Devotees, was inspired by the League of Nations, which had been established after World War I, and which didn't last. Then came World War II, and the League of Nations was finished. But the League of Nations, League of Devotees, we can well suspect that he was relating to that, and because that was a world organization, he would have been thinking similarly, okay, we'll have a League of Devotees. But he was in this town, Jhansi, which he could understand is not the future. It's not going to expand from here. And that's when he drew back, and some years later, he headed for New York. Well, then we can move forward again we can move forward quite a bit to the year 2018, to a Vyasa Puja offering by Narottama Prabhu, in which he goes through each of the 7 purposes of ISKCON and gives examples of how each of the 7 have been successfully achieved in 2018. So he's giving instances. So I'll read the first purpose as it's now worded, and then what he says about it. To systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life, in order to check the imbalance of values in life, and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. Now, I was a bit amused by Narottama's example of success for this he speaks about the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, which is not an ISKCON entity. Yes, there are ISKCON devotees who lead it and run it, but it's not an ISKCON project. But he points out that this has been very successful. He says, jumping to the middle of it, he says, OCHS has produced dozens of highly educated men and women, doctorates and professors who teach in universities, publish scholarly books, and conduct in-depth research into the Vaishnava tradition and other Vedic traditions. Inspired by your vision, Srila Prabhupada is addressing, OCHS is robustly, quote, propagating spiritual knowledge to society at large at the highest intellectual levels. Well, I might add as a footnote that just in the last 3 years or so, the OCHS has developed as a kind of sort of backroom project, a very nice program called Gaudiya Studies. And so this is really the beginnings of something which is very promising and which is now making some cooperation, some coordination with Bhaktivinoda College, Radhadesh. And to the second purpose, Narottama Prabhu's second purpose is to propagate a consciousness of Krishna as it is revealed in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And here he gives some numbers. These were from 2018. Through 6,000 annual festivals, 3,600 weekly home study groups, and Sunday feasts and other programs at 650 ISKCON temples worldwide, your followers are systematically propagating, quote unquote, a consciousness of Krishna on a global scale. In India alone, 1.2 million school children are fed healthy, sanctified vegetarian prasadam lunches 6 days a week through ISKCON food relief programs, thus ensuring those children a healthier life, a better education, and a lifelong appreciation for the kindness of ISKCON and its founder, Acharya. These are just a few examples of how your desire to spread awareness of Sri Krishna's glories continues to inspire Krishna conscious activism throughout the world. Shall I read his third one? Mm-hmm. Why not? It's uplifting. Third purpose, to bring the members of the society together with each other and nearer to Krishna, the prime entity, and thus to develop the idea within the members and humanity at large that each soul is part and parcel of the quality of Godhead, Krishna. Now, it's interesting how he frames this. Many devotees, says Narottama Prabhu, have been inspired by this aspect of your mission. One example is the Grihastha Vision team, led by your disciples. I don't know if they're still involved. Krishna Nandini Dasi and her husband Tariq. Yeah,
she left the body.
Oh. The dedicated couples of the GVT strengthen devotee families by teaching seminars, training mentors, counseling couples, and sharing wisdom via their book, Heart and Soul Connection. by promoting understanding, honesty, respect, and loving relationships among family members. These disciples and grand disciples of yours have brought thousands of devotees closer, quote, together with each other and nearer to Krishna, the prime entity, unquote. So like that, he's giving a very positive perspective that, yes, we're doing it. And that's, I think, valuable to be reminded, because sometimes we might feel, although Srila Prabhupada several times said, don't be discouraged, sometimes we might feel discouraged because we don't feel that the mission is spreading quite as we would like it to. I remember when, soon after I joined the devotees in Germany, the book Lord Chaitanya in 5 Features appeared. Anyone remember that book? It was the 7th chapter. Was it also 8th chapter? In any case, 7th, only 7th, of Caitanya-caritamrta Adi Lila. And I just remember we read that cover to cover sort of in one day, a few of us devotees in our little center, and we were just completely inspired. We just couldn't wait to get out the door and to plunder the storehouse of love of God for Lord Chaitanya and spread the mission and take over Germany. And it wasn't too long after that the 60 devotees in Germany were considered by the press. They couldn't tell how many of us there were. There must be thousands of us, because we went everywhere, village to village. We used to have a Falvey van piled into this van. We'd drive into a village, jump out. It was like, it was like blitzkrieg. And we'd go out in the street, do Harinam up and down the, sometimes it was the only street of the village. And we'd distribute books for an hour or 2 hours. And then we'd jump back in the van and drive off. What was that? Yeah. What was this? When we think about purposes of ISKCON, I think it's necessary for us to recognize that these are open-ended purposes. By that I mean there's never going to be a point where we can say, okay, now we've done it. Now we can go home. In this respect, it's different from, what do they call them? SMART goals. What does SMART stand for?
Specific, measurable.
Specific, measurable,
Achievable.
achievable, realistic,
Time-based.
time-based, yeah. All of which is very good for getting things done.
Except.
It's all good for getting things done. And of course, we might want to have SMART goals in the pursuit of the purposes of ISKCON, so that we can have a sense of progress. But at the same time, we want to recognize it's open-ended. And another thing that's open-ended is our own potential, collective and individual. Our tendency is to impose mental limits on ourselves and on individually and collectively, And a result of that can be what we talked about in our seminar, one of the constellations of emotions is apathy. And apathy is exactly the opposite of what we want, and certainly the opposite of what Srila Prabhupada wanted for his mission. We can be, we can appreciate that, as Srila Prabhupada said, if you can just maintain what I've established, then that is good. And we can say that is happening, but so much more is also happening. And one of the things that's happening over time is a kind of tendency, there's what's called centrifugal force and there's centripetal force. And centrifugal force is the force that goes out when you spin something. We used to, in the brahmachari ashram, there was in the bathroom, there was a spin dryer machine for drying our gamchas. And it never lasted very long. It always broke very quickly because it's in so much use. But it spins and then the water goes out. So the Krishna consciousness movement is spinning. And it's, in that sense, you can say it's expanding, but as it's expanding, it's also all different sorts of variegated ideas are there. And this becomes a cause of concern, of anxiety, sometimes for devotees. One point I find helpful, we're speaking about 7 purposes of ISKCON, is to think in terms, yes, of ISKCON, but also of the Krishna consciousness movement, which was the term, in a sense, preferred by Srila Prabhupada. I point to his preface to the Bhagavad Gita. He speaks 6 times, if I remember right, of the Krishna consciousness movement in that preface. And of course, at the time of Srila Prabhupada's presence, there was a kind of co-extensiveness of ISKCON and the Krishna consciousness movement. They were the same. What if we recognize what I think is a reality that begs to be acknowledged, and that is the Krishna consciousness movement, since in the last few decades, has expanded out in ways which are no longer inclusive of ISKCON, in the narrower sense, and that's all right. One devotee has raised the question as a theoretical mind experiment. What if it would happen, just what if, it wouldn't be ISKCON that spreads Krishna consciousness in such a vast way, but some other institution? Would we be happy or would we be sad?
Sad.
Sad?
The Siddhanta stays the same.
Huh?
If the Siddhanta stays the same,
If the Siddhanta stays the same.
then it's fine.
Okay. Anyway, that's a subject for reflection. It's put in a somewhat, kind of a challenging way. But it also brings me back to a point I just feel would be helpful for fulfilling the 7 purposes of ISKCON, and that is to really make substantial steps in what's been discussed for several years in the GBC, as I understand. Lord Chaitanya Prabhu can correct me or elaborate. And that is the idea of establishing affiliates of our society. And I've seen one scheme that was worked out, I think, by a committee of the GBC. Urmila Devi sent me a copy of the PowerPoint, and it had not one sort of affiliate, but 5 sorts of affiliates. And I was impressed. I thought, here it is. Here's the unity and diversity, in diversity solution. Okay, I'm just throwing that out. Maybe that will be a discussion, a topic for discussion later. Finally, I think I'll, for now, just say, and maybe this is something we could do this afternoon, this idea of affirmations. Affirmations are, it's kind of been in the New Age sphere of self-help and so on, but it has some substance to it, and that is the idea of making a statement in a positive form in the present tense, although it is not in the present reality. In fact, you make a statement as if it's in the present. We might have, for people, we have a garden facility to feed 100 devotees of Radhadesh for the whole year, for the balance. And so that could be one sort of exercise that we do to kind of get our, as we say, creative juices going. And if anyone has a burning idea of an affirmation right now, you're welcome to share it. An affirmation related to the one or more of the 7 purposes of ISKCON.
Also, I was just deviating a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Maharaj, maybe just to confirm what you're saying, the idea of this afternoon is definitely to have focus groups for each purpose, to come up with per purpose within the subgroups to do these affirmations, like what if we could establish this or realize this in Radhadesh, aligning with this specific purpose. So I think there'll be very much that what we want to do.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Bhagavatam.
I can have a
Who?
thank you. No.
Tebow was telling me that if the garden is going to feed the ISKCON devotees all year round, devotees are going to have to learn to eat a lot simpler.
Which would not be a bad thing.
We can do many affirmations.
Yes. We can do some affirmations about simple eating.
Great.
Yes, so.
We have classrooms and teachers for courses in all the Varnas in Radhadesh.
Oh, okay. We have classrooms and teachers for all 4 Varnas in Radhadesh. Sounds like Varnashram College, or maybe it's just Varna College. But yes, okay. We don't have our affirmation juices going. That will happen in the course of the day. That's for later. Yeah. So I will, maybe I will end with a statement from Shastra. It's in the 11th canto, which I find always inspiring about Bhakti in general. And I think we can apply it to what we are pursuing, what we're looking for. Bhakti pareshana bhavo viraktir anyatra chaishya trika ekakala prapanya anastirya tashnatasyus tushti pushti shut avayo anvaksam. That an analogy is being given with eating. When we eat, we become satisfied, we become nourished, tushti, pushti, and kshutapaya, our hunger is removed. Similarly, for one who is prapadya, for one who has taken shelter of the Lord, bhakti, paresha anubhava, and virakti are realized. Bhakti is devotion, paresha anubhava is experience of the Lord, of the Supreme Lord, and virakti is detachment. So all three simultaneously can happen. And similarly, all three of these can simultaneously happen as we practice devotional service in the context of admission. I always like to remember the late Gaudiya Swami's analogy of the juggling of three torches. We have three things we need to juggle. One is our own physical, mental, social needs. One is our sadhana, and one is the mission. If we concentrate on only one or two of these, something is missing. We need to have all three torches in the air. And that takes skill and it takes concentration. And I'm told that a juggler, to be able to do this, where does he or she concentrate? Not on any of the three balls, but in the middle. And the eyesight goes to the center. So, okay, in our analogy, that would mean focus on Krishna. But I would suggest we can also take this analogy and say we don't want just three separate, spheres of action. We want to integrate them. And that requires an active process and active endeavor to integrate all three. And it's that which we are learning from our acharyas. They are integrated in wonderful ways. Yeah. Okay, I will stop there. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Prem Hare.